Hi, nice that you're still here, listening to the last small talk. The title of my talk is Algaemy, Envisioning Future Crafts. The work Algaemy first is about using microalgae as pigments for textile printing. But this all happens in the major context of the future crafts. As designers, for us, the research on microalgae is not a totally scientific research. It's just the opposite. It's really like about an aesthetic research. First, about us. I'm Essi Glomb, and I work together with Rasa Weber, who is a product designer. I'm a textile designer, and together we founded Studio Blond & Bieber. We are a Berlin-based design studio, and we work with a strong research approach. The work Algaemy was started by us in 2013. This image shows an alchemy laboratory, an old laboratory, and this for us stands for the fact that we see ourselves also working in a kind of design laboratory. We like to merge the fields of design and sciences together, and for us this really is about the future of design or of like any fields. So about the microalgae, this was one of the starting pictures for us. The picture is taken in China, in Qingdao, in 2013, so just before we started our research. And in Qingdao, on the beaches, there was a huge algae plague. And from the context of the Western Europeans, we would say that, okay, we would like to avoid the algae-plagued water. We wouldn't go in there. We think that it's maybe disgusting. We would avoid it. But in China, and you can maybe apply it to Asia in general, it's a different cultural context. And therefore, people did not avoid the water, but opposite, they went swimming in the water. They put the algae all over because they believe in the healthiness of the material. So quoting Richard Mabey, what he said about weeds is that weeds are just a plant in the wrong place. So that was a bit the starting point before we continued our research concerning the material, the microalgae. This is the context we know it mainly from. That's the algae as weeds polluting lakes and the sea. There's a second perspective, that's the algae connected to futuristic visions. There's a lot of research done on microalgae being used for energy or oil production. But one gap is still there, and that's the aesthetic research on the same material, which is, well, it hasn't been researched in that field that much yet. So through the eye of the designer, we have a totally different approach. It's not from the scientific side, but more from the aesthetic approach. But we do need the science to research that field as well. So the first step for us was to go to a research institute that was the Fraunhofer Institute in Stuttgart, and they research on microalgae. We were talking to the scientists, and of course they were telling us a lot of interesting things, but in the end what caught the interest of us was the color palette of algae. And even the scientists said that, oh, well, what do you mean? They're all green. But that's exactly the point when we went there as designers looking onto the same subject in a different way. For us, algae was not just green, but it was also blue and yellow and even red. And that was for us astonishing and really interesting. So that was how we started our research and also the first test prints. The industry is always seeking for light-stable colors. What we do is that we are researching on a biodynamic color palette that is not toxic. And that's because we use the living organisms. The living organisms are changing because of light exposure and oxidation in the air. But that brought us to a really interesting point to use algae for, kind of as nature's smart materials. We discovered that they do change. They do change over time, but they change in a very interesting way. They really change the color. So a strong green becomes turquoise after a while. So for us, that added a kind of a new layer of value. As designers, of course, we also created the wish to materialize and visualize our research, and that's why we developed, in the first step, we developed the textile prints. Another step, or another part of that still very conceptual work, was visualizing the production of the material. For designers, it's really amazing to be able to grow the material you work with and to influence the material. So that machine actually illustrates the different steps you need to take to filter, to grow the algae, to filter it and prepare printing paste. Yeah, that's the different steps. I think there's not enough time to talk about them in detail. And also in the end, we do even print with the walls. Of course, that's more of a performance, but still, it works. So we will have a really short look at the video, just very quickly. That's the wrong video. Doesn't really fit into the context. Okay, so maybe if there's time, we do the video later on, then we continue. Okay. Yeah, so for us, we did start with a research-based work. We did a lot of research in a scientific way, but in the end, for us, it's a lot about also the story that we try to tell. And we try to develop a certain visual language for that. And the video and also photography and writing a lot of texts and so on belongs to that. So the video you can find on our website. I will continue. Can you turn off the video, please? Thanks. So for the last 2 minutes, I would like to talk about the word future crafts. Future crafts turned out to be a major keyword for our work. That image shows woven algae, and that kind of illustrates our try, like in the beginning of the project, to use the unknown, the new material, and translate it with a technique that is well known. So for us as designers, we try to combine the innovation and the unknown with a strong link to traditional crafts, to in the end not create a sterile design, but to create a design that you can in the end relate to and connect to. Crafts were developed over many centuries, and they are the familiar, the warm, and the subject that is easy for you to connect to. You can also find that topic in the word algaemy. It's a fusion of two words, of the word algae, obviously you know now where that comes from, and alchemy, from that experimental approach, from the traditional, the subject that gives you a certain idea of warmth. So in the end, we try to not just design objects, but really to design concepts and stories to embed innovation into a context that is easier to relate to. The work was, as a second step, or in a new step, translated into fashion. Together with the Berlin-based fashion designer Elenia Gortana, we developed prototypes of algae-printed fashion pieces, and also the shoes were produced together with the fashion company Trippen. Here, there are some images. So, as a future perspective for the project, we think that on one hand, it's really interesting to try to translate it into an industrial application, to not just have the conceptual part, but also to bring it into production that can be textiles, surfaces, fashion, interior design. But on the other hand, it's really important to continue the research, the scientific research. There are so many species, algae species, that are not researched on yet, so maybe we can really increase the color palette. So yeah, for us in the end, it's really also the personal story behind a technique, behind an innovation that makes you in the end keep an object, and also to create a certain relationship between the consumer and the product. And yeah, in the end you meet the product with curiosity. So that's, yeah, a certain impression. Thank you.